Good morning and welcome to another online Awaken sermon. This one, part 4 of What Makes Us Human. We're keeping the conversation going. And this morning, what I want to talk about the desire that we all have to live from a sense of purpose, to live from a sense of meaning. I think one of the things that makes us human, one of the things that unites all of us, is the desire that we all have to live our lives from a sense of purpose. We want our lives to matter. We want our lives to mean something. We want to all discover and live from the greatest gift that we have to offer the world. Now, the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, he wrote a famous book, Man's Search for Meaning. And this book came out of his own personal experience that he had at the Nazi concentration camp of Auschwitz. And after surviving Auschwitz, he reflected back on his time there. And he asked himself the question, well, what distinguished those who made it out of the camp from those who didn't actually survive the camp? And one of the things that he says, he argues that finding and holding meaning mattered the most. He said that those who lost their sense of purpose more readily died. Those who had a sense of purpose, those who had something that was bigger than the situation that they found themselves in, were able to survive and make it out of the camp. Now, one of the other interesting things that he says, what we actually need is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. What we need is not the discharge of tension at any cost, which, think about the modern life that we live. We're all about discharging tension. We're all about comfort and convenience. But what Frankl argues, what he says is that comfort, convenience, a tensionless state, that's actually not what we want. It's not what we need the most in life. But we need the call of a potential meaning waiting to be fulfilled. I remember a couple of years ago, I was at a conference, and the great pastor Andy Stanley was one of the keynote speakers. And he gave this illustration where he was talking about tension, and he brought out a rubber band. Now, I don't have a rubber band this morning. I have a hair tie. It's quarantine living at its finest. And he talked about a rubber band, and he said that for a rubber band, the way in which it's doing its job is for there to be some tension on the band. Now, if there's too much tension, the rubber band could break. I often, at the gym, I'll use these elastic bands that I'll put around my legs, and then I'll move one leg to one side, and then we'll keep going back and forth, back and forth. And sometimes, a few times actually, this has happened to me where I guess I put too much tension because I end up spreading my legs a little too far, and it snaps the band, and the band goes flying somewhere across the room. Luckily, it hasn't hurt anyone yet. There's been no elastic band injuries. But too much tension, it'll snap the band. Think about your life. Too much tension on your life, and you might snap. We've all heard the expression before, he just snapped, or she's about to snap. Too much tension. But the opposite also is no good, where you exist in a tensionless state. In this state, the rubber band is not doing its job. And he was relating this to leadership, where he was talking about in any leadership position, there's always going to be tension, and you have to learn how to manage the tension. Managing the tension properly will help you and your organization move forward. Too much tension, there's going to be all sorts of conflict. It's not going to be a good work environment. There's going to be way too much pressure. But at the other end of the spectrum, too little tension, and you're never going to move things forward. You're just going to exist in a state of apathy, a state of lethargy, just because, well, there's nothing pushing you to the next level. And so he said, as a leader, what you need to come to discover is how to balance the tension, how to have it exist right in that healthy range. Now, I think this is true for leadership, but it's true in all areas of life. And this is exactly what Viktor Frankl is saying in his book. He's saying that in order for us to discover and to live from a true sense of purpose, there needs to be a certain level of tension. Again, too much, you're going to snap. Too little, you're going to just want to sit on the couch and eat potato chips, binge watch soap operas all day, or daytime TV, which, yeah, not really going to help you discover your purpose. So finding that happy medium, that's the way for us to discover and live from our purpose. Now, over the past couple of weeks, we've been looking quite a bit at a man by the name Paul. And we've been looking at his letters that show up in the New Testament, in the latter half of the Bible. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, here's what Paul says about the life that he's living. Here's how he describes his journey. And if we remember back to a couple of weeks, we talked about this transformational experience that Paul had. He encountered the resurrected Christ, and his purpose in life completely shifted. He had this one sense of purpose, and then he had this transformational experience, and everything changed for him. I'm sure many of you understand what Paul's talking about. You were walking down one path, and then something happened in life. There was a disruption, and one of the common terms being used right now is pivot. You pivoted. You stopped walking that path, and you found a new sense of purpose. You found a new sense of meaning. I mean, for many of us right now, that's sort of what's happening. We're all asking ourselves the question, well, what really is bringing a sense of purpose in my life? Are all the things that I was doing before this moment in time, were they bringing me closer to my purpose? Or are there some things to leave behind, and now there's a new sense of purpose beginning to emerge? But back to Paul, here he is, 2 Corinthians. He's writing to the church at Corinth. And in chapter 11, he says this, verse 24, 5 times I received the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. And you thought you had a bad day. It just keeps getting worse. Verse 26, I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my own countrymen, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false brothers. Is there anywhere that he hasn't been in danger? Sounds like his entire life has just been one moment of danger after the next. I have labored, I have toiled, I have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst, and I have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. And then verse 28, as if all of that wasn't bad enough, he says, besides everything else, all that pales in comparison, right, is what it sounds like. I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches. Paul is describing a life of hardship, a life of tension. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I read that, I'm not thinking of that healthy tension that Andy Stanley was talking about. I'm thinking of the tension that is cranked up beyond, right at the level of where the thing's going to snap. But for some reason, for Paul, he's a glutton for punishment, we could say. For him, that sort of healthy tension. I mean, for the rest of us, for us normal folk, that would make us snap. That would make us lose our minds. But Paul's discovered a purpose. He met the resurrected Christ, and now his purpose in life, at this point, it's going around telling as many people as he possibly can. It's visiting as many cities as he can and telling people, I've met the resurrected Christ. And he desires for others to do the same. He wants to spread this gospel, this good news of Jesus, this divine grace and love that's upon all of us. And his purpose is now awakening others to that reality. It's showing others that the divine favor and grace that they're longing for, it's theirs. And so he's willing to undergo all these hardships, all these difficulties, these dangers, as he so aptly puts it, because he's found a purpose that can carry him through anything. And he's come to discover that living from his sense of purpose and fulfilling that purpose is bringing him more joy than any other way of living could possibly produce. And see, that's what happens when you live from a sense of purpose. It gives you joy and strength to walk through all the hardships that inevitably will rise up. I'm often asked by people, how did you become a pastor? And when I reflect back on my journey, when I reflect back on how this all started, it began probably when I was about 18 years old. And you know how you have certain days in life you look back on and they're so vivid, the memories from that day, they're so clear. They're all in color. There's no black and white here. Everything is so color. You can remember the smells, the sights, the sounds of a particular day or a particular moment. That's how it was for me when this journey started. It was a beautiful summer day. I was in Mexico on a trip with our church. And I remember we had some free time this afternoon. And I was talking with one of the leaders. And here I was. It was the summer between my senior year of high school and freshman year of college. And I had already been accepted into college. Grove City College University. Small school in western Pennsylvania. I had already been accepted, but I hadn't claimed a major yet. And we were talking about me going off to school and starting my college journey. And this leader asked me, he said, what's your major going to be? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do after these 4 years of your time in school? And I sort of sat there for a moment. I didn't have an answer. But then out of nowhere, I mean, I have no idea to this day where this answer came from. But it was one of those moments where it was as if the sky opened, the clouds parted, and there was this divine light that shone down on me. And I remember after that pause, I said, you know, I'm kind of curious about the Bible. I guess I'll study the Bible. I mean, that's how it was. That's how the whole story began. I no idea where that came from. At that point, I don't think I'd even read through the Bible, but it must have been something that I was curious about. And I said, well, that's what I want to pursue. That's what I want to learn more about. And that's what I did. I went to school and declared Bible major. I think the actual major was Christian Thought. What a name. And I remember I would tell people, they would ask, what's your major? Christian thoughts. They're like, what does that even mean? Does it just mean that you think Christian thoughts, whatever that means? Yet that was the major that I declared. And then as I started going through this major, learning more, discovering more, one of the next things that I was curious about was, or the next things that I felt it within me was, well, hey, I want to work with teenagers. And I want to show them what I'm learning. I want to show them what I'm discovering about the Bible, about God, about faith and spirituality and life. So I graduated, and that's what I did. I got a job as a youth pastor because it felt right. There was no formula for it. There was nothing beyond simply it felt right. It felt like the next thing to do. So that's what I did. And then during that time, I had this feeling again that I want to study more. I want to learn more. And so I went for my MDiv. I went to theological school, which I went for a master's program, the MDiv. A beast of a program, 93 credits. And As I was getting to the end of my time in the master's program, I had this sense within me, and maybe some of you can relate to this. I had this sense like, all right, I'm getting to the end of this season. This chapter is closing. Again, there was no formula for it. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't even put into words why I felt a particular way. I just had a sense, a feeling within me, things were changing. And as I started sitting with that feeling and trying to figure out, okay, well, what does that mean? What's the next step? I started thinking about my own life and what I was experiencing, what I was thinking about. And one of the things that I realized during that time is that I was finding myself dissatisfied with many of the current forms of church that were in existence. And what I came to discover as I would talk with more people about this dissatisfaction is that many of my friends were feeling the same way. They were feeling like they didn't fit into any of the current systems or structures that existed for church during this time. And I started thinking, well, what if I put my own unique spin on it? What if I actually started something? What if I put my own unique blend of church together, and what if I just saw where it went? What if I just saw who joined and who became a part and who was interested in being part of a church and exploring spirituality in the way in which, for me, was actually working? And so that's how this whole church planting journey began. It was a feeling, it was a sense, it was a dissatisfaction, it was a following of my curiosity, a following of my passions, right? There was this fire I had within me where there was a sense that I couldn't do anything else. I knew that if I were to just continue what I was doing, or if I was to just go into something else, another job or another church, there would be this constant sense of unease within me. There would be this constant sense of dissatisfaction. I had this fire within my belly, and I knew that I had to go and explore it. I had to go and see where that path would lead me. Now, just because I went and pursued that path doesn't mean that it's been free of hardships or difficulties. There's been moments when it felt like that rubber band was going to snap. Very rarely have I ever felt one of these moments. More often it'd be one of these where I was like, whoa, don't know if I can handle this any longer. And I remember, again, going back to those days that you remember, those days that stand out to you because there was something significant that happened on that day. It was a beautiful spring morning, much like today. And I was probably about a year or so into having started Awaken. And, some of the expectations that I had for Awaken of how I was expecting things to go, they weren't materializing as quickly or in the way in which I had envisioned. And I remember sitting on that park bench and just thinking to myself, I'm done. That's it. This is over. Let's bring the ship back to the harbor because this journey, I'm over it. I'm done with it. Too much hardship. Things aren't going the way in which I had expected or how I want things to go. And I remember sitting on that bench and I had this realization, like, you didn't sign up for this journey to have things go exactly how you planned for them to go. Rather, you signed up for this journey because of the life that it was bringing you. You signed up for this journey because you had this fire within you. And if you didn't explore this path, if you didn't walk this path, then you would always be left wondering, well, what if I had actually explored behind that door? What if I had actually opened the door and walked behind it? If I had never done that, if I never gave it a chance, I'd always be left wondering, well, what if? I was journeying down this road because I was simply exploring my passions and my curiosity. See, one of the things about life is that we're often not taught how to create a life of meaning. More often, we're taught how to create a life of success. But success and meaning or purpose, they don't always align. And what we're often taught in school, or the message that is constantly being given to us, is live a life of success, material success. The life that you want is a life of fame, a life of hundreds, thousands, millions of Instagram followers, or it's a life of financial success. It's a life of other people knowing who you are. But that doesn't always lead you to a life of purpose, to a life of meaning. And going back to what Frankl discovered from his time in Auschwitz is the thing that we want, the thing that brings joy, that brings life to our souls, is living a life of purpose and meaning. But we're not often taught that way of being. We're pushed a story of success. I mean, for me, when I had that bench moment, it was because I was listening to that story of success is what you want at all costs. And because I hadn't achieved a certain level of success that I was hoping for, well, then I needed to pivot. I needed to find a new path, a new journey. But when you come to discover a life of purpose and a life of meaning, it gives you joy that allows you to withstand all the hardships that you'll inevitably face. Think about Paul. I mean, he has a list of hardships that he faced. But to him, they paled in comparison to the joy that he found in living from a sense of purpose and meaning. For him, he discovered what brought him life. And because of it, it brought him joy. And he came to discover that he was able to survive anything because he had a purpose that was grounding him, that was acting like a compass for his life, directing his path. Now, maybe you're wondering at this point, all right, well, how do I discover my purpose? You've sold me on the fact that I need to live, or the fact that I desire to truly live from my true sense of purpose and meaning, the fire that's within my soul, but how do I actually come to discover it? For me, it's been following my curiosity. That's how it started when I was 18 years old, following the things that I was curious about. I have a picture of a dog that's trying to sniff his way down a trail. And the dog is simply following his nose. And it's his nose that allows him to follow the trail to whatever he's trying to discover. That's the picture I have of my life. I've been following a trail for the past 20 years of my life. I don't know where the journey is taking me. But that's joy in itself. The fact that around every turn, something new might show up. I mean, at first it was, I'm curious about the Bible. Then it was, let's start working with teenagers and showing them the things that I'm discovering and what I'm learning. And then it was starting Awaken and well, what if I were to create my own unique blend of church? And so I've just been following that path one step at a time. And the interesting part about it, I have no idea where the next step will take me. But that's part of the joy. That's part of the fun and the excitement. That's the journey itself. I mean, we all know people who are living that tensionless life. We have a phrase for people who are living the tensionless life. It's people who have lost the will to live. You all know these people. You interact with these people on a regular basis. You can see this in their eyes. There's no fire. There's no life in their eyes. They're those who are living with slumped shoulders because all the passion, all the curiosity has gone out from them. Instead of living into the passion and the curiosity, they've avoided it. They've walked a different path. And so it's taken them away from life. They've walked the path of comfort and convenience. And it's not bringing them to a place of discovering their true purpose. So follow your curiosity. For me, when I see people who are following the things that make them curious or the things that they're passionate about, I see it. It exudes out of them. Those are the people that I want to be around. Those are the people that I want to ask all sorts of questions to. Like, how did you come to discover this? What were the steps that you took? And oftentimes, when you ask those questions of the people who are exuding life and purpose, they don't really have answers. They don't have a formula. It was, I had this feeling, or I was curious about this, or here's the thing that I was passionate about, and so I just started exploring it, and it led me to where I find myself today. I think that's how the whole thing works. Discovering your purpose, discovering meaning. Sometimes we make it way more complicated than it really is. Sometimes the next step in discovering your purpose, it's often right there in front of you. But it's the step that we're a bit afraid to take because we think, whoa, no, it can't be as good as that. But yeah, that's where divine purpose is buried. It's buried in your passions, the things that bring life to your soul. So my prayer for you this week is that you would seek out, that you would search out your purpose, that you would come to discover a life of meaning, a life of purpose, by following the things that you're curious about, the things that you're passionate about. May you take the next step in discovering purpose and meaning this week by allowing yourself, by giving yourself permission to explore your curiosity, to explore your passions. And by doing so, may you come to find the divine purpose that has been birthed and buried in your soul from the very beginning. May you come to discover a life of joy, a life of significance, as you discover and live from your true purpose. May grace and peace be with you this week, my friends.